Did you see Dan Burns' goal against City?
Yes. Yeah, the miserable poke it off his side foot finish,
Oh my God,
fall on his ass while putting it in the back of the net. Yeah, that was great.
that's so funny.
That was some quality shit, man.
The top comment on Reddit was just "he's really tall" in all caps, which made me laugh so hard. Welcome back to the penultimate Cannons and Lions episode of the season. The Premier League is done. Champions League and Europa League spots have been sorted, and I'm here as always with Daniel Milton. How are you feeling after Chelsea's heroic loss to Aston Villa to ensure a Champions League place?
Yeah, after shitting myself multiple times throughout the course of the game, thinking that we were going to go from a double champions and Champions League next year comfortably in the top four to 2 weeks later blowing everything and not being in the Champions League next year, we heroically blew it not as badly as Leicester did, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So
all this
it's a wonderful feeling to fail gloriously.
Yeah, well, I mean, all of this kicked off with your midweek tie against Leicester, where you guys managed to put yourself in good stead to qualify for the Champions League.
Yeah, this was a week of highs, lows, and ultimately highs again, in a pathetic way, I guess. That first game, Chelsea 2, Leicester 1. Great performance from Chelsea. Fairly dominant for pretty much 70 minutes, the first 70 minutes of the game, generating chance after chance after chance. It really seemed like a matter of time before the goal came. Eventually, it did come from a corner with Antonio Rudiger putting one in. A penalty soon after converted by Jorginho with the most picturesque hop-skip penalty I've ever seen.
Yeah. And you got a lot to choose from him, so.
So, people say Bruno's the king of the hop. Nope. Jorginho is. He just, doesn't do all the other stuff Bruno Fernandes does that makes him so great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, I mean, look, it ended up 2-1 after Iheanacho scored to pull Leicester within one. And probably you could say should have ended up 2-2 after Ayoze Perez blew a glorious in-on-goal through opportunity by blazing it over the bar when he really should have converted. Despite that, I think it's fair to say it was definitely a deserved win for Chelsea. And it really, at that point, had everyone thinking that Chelsea were going to cruise through to the top four after having beaten their immediate rival Leicester to secure third place. It seemed like that would be the way things would proceed. One last note about this game before moving on to what happened in the weekend, I think. This was the second game in a row where Reece James started at right center back and Azpilicueta started at right back. And although Chelsea generated tons of chances, I sort of thought to myself, I don't know what I think of this. I didn't like it last game against Leicester. I don't really like it now, but we played well enough where it was hard to question it. But it was the second game in a row where that happened.
Well, what I've kind of thought about that is like how you were talking about for the Real Madrid tie, Tuchel was doing sort of a test run of Azpilicueta in the wide right spot. I think this might be an employing of that to try and maybe counter Cancelo's movement forward by having Reece James kind of be more deep to intercept his runs. I don't know how you feel about that, but
that's actually a pretty good point now that you put it that way. And not just about Cancelo, but more so about if you put this all through the lens of trying to adapt your team best for playing a game against City. On the one hand, there's a lot of that makes sense. Not just, I think the point you made about Cancelo's valid. I also think you could just say, look, they don't have anyone above 5'8" in their lineup near the front of the team. They just play a bunch of midfielders. They don't play a striker even. Why have three center backs when you really need a bunch of guys who can keep up with essentially four wingers on the pitch?
Yeah.
That all makes sense to me, especially. The problem, though, with that is that we also beat City twice within a month,
Mhm.
not using that at all and playing Marcos Alonso for large stretches at left back, who is sort of the opposite of the theory I just espoused as well.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, I think what you're saying makes sense. I just question why Tuchel would feel the need to make that change for City going into the Champions League final, given the success of the lineup before. I guess one possible explanation is he thinks Pep is going to adapt to what he was doing earlier, and by changing this, he'll sort of stay one step ahead. But I don't know. It's an interesting point you raised. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I outside of that, in respect of this game, I just think this game, even though Chelsea managed to score two, it sort of further evidenced a bit of the finishing issues Chelsea have, where they're much better at creating high quality chances than they are at converting easy chances.
Yeah.
And who knows? I mean, Timo Werner was ostensibly brought in to solve that problem, and he sort of seems to be contributing to that. So I don't really know what the answer is with this current squad, but some people are saying Giroud should start the Champions League final. Personally, I really don't think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I don't think we've seen Giroud very much at all. If only from the bench. So I think that would be a pretty big curveball to throw in, both for Giroud and the way that you guys have been playing, to spring that in Champions League final. So
no, I agree with that. After that great performance against Leicester, moving into the weekend. Now, the great thing about the Premier League final weekend, of course, is that every team plays its game at the same time simultaneously.
yeah.
So as this game started, Liverpool fairly quickly, Leicester actually were the first to get in front. Leicester pulled 1-0 ahead while it was 0-0 in the Chelsea Villa game. And at this stage, that just sort of seemed to confirm what really, as Chelsea fans at that point, we all understood, which was that we needed to just win this game, get the one last game done. If it's over, that'll be it. Champions League guarantee, whatever Leicester does. But at this point, obviously, the expectation was that Liverpool and Leicester would also handle their business, so we had to do so accordingly. Then Liverpool scores through Sadio Mane. And that, again, sort of further confirms what we all thought, until Tottenham then equalized against Leicester. Leicester then pulled back ahead through Jamie Vardy. And I believe around this time, Bertrand fucking Traore, former Chelsea player, pegs one off the bottom of the crossbar into the net. Villa take a 1-0 lead, and at this point, I think every Chelsea fan heart just stopped.
Yeah.
Now, one thing actually I did forget to mention about that game against Leicester, N'Golo Kanté came off in the first half with an injury. Hopefully it's nothing major and he'll be back for the Champions League final, but he didn't play in the weekend's game against Aston Villa. When the second goal went in, the second Chelsea player in less than a week went down and had to be pulled off early when Ed Mendy crashed into the post trying to keep the Bertrand Traore shot out of the net, injuring himself, and Kepa was put in for the second half.
Yeah.
So now I guess we have questions as to whether either one of Kanté or Mendy will be fit for the final, which is not great.
Yep. That would be very troubling for you guys, for you to have even not one of those two guys. They've been very pivotal to you. And although Kepa hasn't been too bad in what he has shown this season, I do think that Mendy has given you guys a lot more comfort between the sticks than he has.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, Kepa's actually been, my mouth, I want to say the word, but my mouth can't quite say it in respect of Kepa. It's he's been
Decent.
decent, yeah. But he hasn't really made any mistakes since Ed Mendy dropped him from the starting lineup in any of his appearances. He's made a few good saves even. And basically the only goals that seem to beat him are penalties or Tielemans thunder cunts from 40 yards out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he hasn't been an issue. But that being said, after he came on, it was not long after that Bertrand fucking Traore won a penalty.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think I messaged, oh, my friends, it is time for the Kepa redemption arc. And the Kepa redemption arc let us down. He dove the wrong way, and we found ourselves down 2-0. Chelsea would ultimately pull one back through Ben Chilwell. One that barely crossed the line, I will say. But was confirmed by goal line technology to have crossed the line. This one ended 2-1. However, around this time, Tottenham first equalized and then proceeded to score two further goals through Gareth Bale. Leicester fall 4-2. Despite Chelsea's loss, they managed to hold on to fourth spot, 1 point ahead of Leicester. Another valiant effort from the Foxes, but unfortunately not to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well
Well,
played, Brendan Rodgers. You've blown it again on the final day. What a glorious loss indeed for Chelsea.
yeah, and obviously with Leicester, they were pushing for that spot. It makes it a little bit less harsh on them that they did manage to come away with an FA Cup victory. But yeah, obviously for a club like Leicester, their new goal now is to always be getting into the Champions League. They're going to be trying to push that top four for years to come. And to be honest, the Schmeichel, who's had a very, very good season this season, had a bad play to have the equalizer at 2-2 for Tottenham. And then the third goal, which was put away by Gareth Bale, in my opinion, should not have counted. There was a very, very clear handball by Kane in the box, which led to this goal, which was VAR checked and was not overturned, which is very questionable. It ended up also, it affected you guys for the good, and it also affected us for the questionably good / bad. But it must suck for Leicester. They've had such a good season, but we've said this a few times that Brendan Rodgers' teams seem to peter out towards the end of the season, and the last day of the season curses them again, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, just this game against Villa, a couple final notes on this one, I think. Reece James was once again used as a center back and Azpilicueta as a right back. And again, I don't think it looked very good. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't think Reece James can't play that role, but I just think at this stage, Azpilicueta is a better fullback than he is a wingback, and it would make a lot more sense to flip those two positions in my mind. But whatever.
I would agree.
Also, I think other than Bertrand Traore, who is definitely the man of the match, a big shout out to Emi Martinez, who made quite a few amazing saves to keep Villa in it. And a big shout out to VAR, who once again foiled Timo Werner multiple times after he had put the ball in the back of the net by finding small bits of players' arms that were offside as part of a build-up move or something like that. Yeah, anytime Timo Werner scores a goal, immediately check VAR, never celebrate, because you know what's coming.
Yeah.
So he said this has been the unluckiest season of his life. I don't know how he could possibly ever be unluckier in that respect, but once again, I mean, look. This game, in a weird way, was a bit of a funny end to the season, just because the Thomas Tuchel era kind of signaled an end to this kind of these joker results we used to get under Frank Lampard all the time.
Yeah.
But this was a return to that era that this very much resembled a game we'd play. Same with that West Brom game where we lost 5-2, of course. But
yeah,
they're the anomalies, and hopefully this is another one out of the system prior to a good game against Man City. If there's anything to take away from this again, Chelsea does seem to play better against the Man Cities of the world than against the West Broms of the world for some strange reason.
yeah.
So at least look, hopefully this isn't telling for how Chelsea will perform against City on the weekend.
Yeah. And I look at that is going to be a great game. We're obviously going to cover that on the next on the next pod, but you know it's going to be a very intense game. I'm very much looking forward to this game. I No offense to you, I definitely hope that City come away with it. I think it would be nice for Sergio Aguero to lift a Champions League and for Guardiola to get his Champions League nod at Barcelona. There's a lot riding on this, but you guys at least have your Champions League qualification, so you'll maybe have another go at it next year.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I believe we've beaten them twice in the span of less than a month. You could do it again. Then again, there's a little voice in the back of my head that says, "Yeah, but you're never beating City 3 times in a row." So that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Look, we're definitely Chelsea are the big underdogs in this one. I don't think there's any other way to put it, but at least we're alive. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was another team in action this weekend.
Fulham.
And this team had one thing to play for.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it this way. You described it as a mixed positive negative earlier on.
Yeah.
Arsenal, on the one hand, had a chance to finish above Tottenham to ring in St. Totteringham's Day once again.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it would come at the expense of playing in the Europa Conference League, the inaugural Europa Conference League.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, good results for Arsenal. No St. Totteringham's Day, but no Europa Conference League. Why don't you sort of break down what happened and how you feel about the outcome?
Yeah, so you know, we needed to basically win out our last few games to even have a chance of this happening, and at the end of the day it did not really depend on us. We just had to win our games, and even then we still may not have gone through, assuming as the games went exactly how they went. We started off in midweek against Crystal Palace, where we put together a pretty decent, it was an okay performance. We didn't have as many shots on target as we should have. It's become a pretty running theme for this season where we just haven't been able to create the chances necessary, the volume of chances to really get a lot of goals. But there was quite a lot of controversy in this game. Some questionable VAR calls, as always. The Schlupp cleats studs up tackle on Chambers in the 5th minute comes to mind. We've seen people go for that. I think that, look, in the 5th minute, if the referee talks to him and gives him a very harsh warning and a yellow, I think that could be the right call, assuming the rest of the game is handled properly, which, let's face it, this is the Premier League. That is a very optimistic conclusion to gather from that. But so that was not called. And there was another incident involving Benteke and El Neni, where Benteke basically throws a forearm jab into the neck of El Neni. And I mean, in every single iteration of this playing out, it is a red card. That is a present day red card every single time. Xhaka was sent off against Burnley for just a grab on the exact same area that Benteke struck against Burnley, sent off immediately after VAR review. I do not understand how they could possibly come to the conclusion that this is not a sending off. It has been called that way all year. all last year, all the year before, basically this entire decade. Whenever you make contact to the face in that manner, you're always sent packing. So that is just another example of how much I'm getting tired of VAR and its calls against Arsenal for and against. Um, but anyways, I digress. The game played out where we opened the scoring with from Pepe after a beautiful cross from Tierney to put us up 1-0, and we trot into halftime 1-0 up. Benteke equalized in the second half from a set piece and a header, which was well put away. But once again, I don't think he should have been on the pitch. And it took until injury time where us trying to rush to get a last minute goal. The ball falls to Odegaard on the right side, and he delivers an inch perfect pass into space for Martinelli, who had come on as a sub. He takes a touch over the keeper, regathers it at the far post, and puts it home to put us back up 1-0. And that pretty much had the game won for us. But just the icing on the cake, Pepe, after scoring in the first half with a brilliant solo effort cutting in from the right side, cuts it into the middle of the box past 3 defenders and tucks it into the far corner, making it 3-1. It was a good result for a game that, Palace was in it. We held the majority of the play. We managed to put the game to bed in injury time, which was pretty much justice for the game, I felt. But having won that game, it put us in a good stead for if results went our way on the final day, we would be finishing ahead of Tottenham. So we go into that final game against Brighton, and really a much different game from us. We were absolutely dominant this entire game. And this is a Brighton that just came off beating Man City. Pepe, once again, he has really been excellent to the end of the season. He scored a brace in this game and was a danger throughout. He was absolutely shredding that side of their team. Pretty much on both. Anytime Pepe gets isolated one-on-one against a center back, he almost always will get a shot on target. And he's been in such good form recently that his second goal was exactly that. He cuts in, he plants it into the bottom corner. Very, very Arjen Robben-esque, not necessarily as powerful as Robben, nor as consistent as him, but very, very Robben-esque, and he puts that away. And his first goal as well was an excellent touch inside the box to flick it up for himself, turn and bangs it through the defender's legs into the back of the net. So he was really, really on fire this game, and we did it justice. We did it well, and we managed to finish the season with 5 straight wins. Very, very positive moving forward. Unfortunately, with the Tottenham result, we didn't get our St. Totteringham's Day, but your UEFA Conference League, I think that. Look, there's the argument to say that you want every little bit of revenue that you possibly can, but I would argue that not having this is not giving any consolation to the Cronkies. And so assuming they're not going to sell the club, that they have no choice but to invest heavily in the squad, which is what we need. And overall, yes, it's disappointing not to finish above Spurs, but I am hoping that this is going to put a lot more pressure on the Cronkies than there is already.
And look, if this is a material source of revenue, arguably that's the worst possible thing that could happen, because if that's the case, the Cronkies, who don't give a crap about whether you win anything or may win a meaningful trophy ever, if it's meaningful revenue, will say, well, what's the difference between playing in this and, maybe even playing in the Europa League, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, 8th becomes just as good as 5th, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, this whole Europa Conference League, I think, is a completely unnecessary tournament, to be perfectly honest. I let me rephrase, actually. I think it's a good idea, but the Premier League, Liga, Serie A, they shouldn't be in it.
Yeah, I
right?
agree with you.
I think this should basically be a tournament for, here's the bubble. The bubble leagues should basically be the Portuguese league and the Dutch league.
Yeah, I agree
where
with you.
and maybe even look, maybe the championship should get spots in this league. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't see the point of having leagues that are so much more valuable than this competing in this thing. So in any event.
I just think they should have wage bill caps for it, which would ostensibly eliminate like low falling Premier League teams from that. But like for example, like teams like in France, like Saint Etienne or clubs of that sort of stature, that I just think that it should be capped at like
Yeah, but
what is the
to be honest,
squad.
I just think if you're in Liga, you probably just don't care about the Europa Conference League. I think the way you would, and if you are in Liga and you would care, the way you would get in maybe is because maybe Ligue 2 should have a chance of qualifying. And if you also got promoted and qualified through Ligue 2, you could play in the Conference League at the same time as being in Liga. You see what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
why you could just exclude those leagues. And the point is, it's just you don't need a league where Tottenham is going up against the 6th place team in Austria or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But I just think that there should be a cap on say like the club's commercial revenue or something like that. Because I
Yeah,
think that that would eliminate like the majority of teams in the Premier League. That would eliminate the majority of teams in like say Italy, where it would be like very, very unfair. Like for example, I think the team qualifying in that spot is going to be like Roma, but the team just under them, Sassuolo, for example, that would be an awesome competition for them to be in, you know, and that would be something very much
yeah,
relished by their fans. So
yeah. I
I
guess that's fair
like for the
enough.
Premier League, I agree with you completely. There's every team in the Premier League can outspend pretty much any of those teams qualifying in the Conference League, and so if they did it along those lines, I would be more inclined. But yeah, I'm totally with you that there's no point in having Tottenham play against like all these teams that, and you know what, knowing Tottenham, they're probably still not going to win it. So
Well, this is the thing. I mean, to be honest, I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans, and I think you agree with this. They're in a way happy that they didn't end up finishing ahead of Tottenham, just because it's a little bit embarrassing for Arsenal to be taking part in the inaugural Europa Conference League after making moves to join the Super League a few months prior. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I
And
mean that's still true for Tottenham. You
well,
know,
that's the
I would
point.
much
And
rather happen to Tottenham. So
right, and I mean, one of my Tottenham supporting friends sent me as soon as the season ended, inaugural English Europa Conference League participants. You'll never sing that, and I just thought, yeah, that's the level of that's what Spurs have to deal with right now. Is that's how they're reckoning with their squad.
yeah,
So look, I mean, yeah, no St. Totteringham's Day, but in a way, I mean, it's a good way to end the season. You're finally playing, putting a few good results together. I don't know how much you would want to take away from sort of the garbage time at the end of the season and playing a little bit better in garbage time after you blew everything meaningful earlier on, so to speak.
yeah,
But look, if there's one really good takeaway from the end of this, it's that Pepe should be able to nail down a spot in the starting 11 on the wing somewhere.
yeah,
And he's finally starting to play like a player who's deserving of that.
yeah,
How you're going to balance out Martinelli, Saka, and Pepe, I mean, I don't know the answer to that one, but I think of those three players, on paper, the one who should be the best right now is Pepe.
yeah. I agree with you. And like Saka has been so important to us. The thing is though is that he's had a lot of minutes for someone of his age. I think he's played the most under 21. I think he's played the most minutes in the Premier League this season. He's been an absolute workhorse for us, and he has dipped off a little bit, but he still contributes obviously. um I just think that, you know, he needs to be a bit more looked after. And look, like if our veteran players actually played like veteran players at the beginning of the season, I don't think you would see as many minutes weighted on Saka and Smith Rowe, because we've basically looked at them for carrying the load this season because players like Willian, who fucking sucks for us, he did not at all perform the way that we expected him to. So that puts a lot of pressure. It reduced the amount of times that Saka could have had rest. Same thing for Emile Smith Rowe. He's come in and he's played extremely well under the circumstances. But that's not sustainable long term to have those young guys in that position, you know. But Pepe really brightening up is such a good sign for next season. I really do think he's gonna be a big menace. He's kind of become more of a flat track bully, which isn't necessarily a criticism. We need those kind of players. Arsene Wenger made a habit of being a flat track bully, losing to all of the top six, and we'd still get fourth or fifth. You know, that gets you in the conversation of being a consistent top four team as if you can be a flat track bully.
Right.
So,
the majority of your games will not be against top four sides.
Yeah, exactly. So that it is good signs for next season. And once again, Pepe's finished the season extremely well. And I'm so happy for him, especially that price tag was weighing very heavy on him in the press, among fan opinion. And he's really, really improved this season a lot more than I thought he would. And so it's nice to see that, you know, we're going to be able to recoup a little bit of that hefty price tag that we placed on him.
Yeah. No, I mean, whether you recoup any of that money or whether he just sort of becomes a player who, even if he doesn't live up to that price tag,
that's more so what I meant by recoup.
Player. Yeah. Either way, I think, look, he's going to have a tough time ever being viewed maybe as good a player as he deserves to be viewed as because of that price tag. Like, it may never get to that place for certain people. But at the very least, I think he's showing he has a chance to be an important player as part of your squad going forward. So
yeah,
he's not a complete bust of a human being like people portray him to be, because he was not very good at the beginning. And
he's not Gervinho.
Well, Arsenal will not be in Europe. Chelsea will be in the Champions League. But one other team that will be in the Champions League after looking like they would be on the outside looking in is Juventus in Italy, starting to look a little bit abroad as pretty much all the other leagues wrapped up this weekend as well. We already knew Inter Milan were champions. Juventus started the day off 1 point behind. If everyone took care of business, they would not make the Champions League. Milan took care of business against Atalanta, which was obviously the harder of the two games.
Yep.
But Napoli could not quite get it done themselves. So Pirlo and his disappointing, underperforming Juventus train wreck will be in the Champions League next season. I think that probably means he keeps his job, to be honest, which is a questionable decision.
I mean, look, like I've said this before, but I mean, if you're gonna fire Pirlo in his first ever managerial experience because he didn't like win the Scudetto or have a good showing, like Arsene Wenger said always that whenever you wanted to give young players experience, you pay for it with points. It's the same thing with managers. And so I just think that like firing at this point now will say so much more negative about the management than I think they might understand. If I get that like Juventus needs to be a top club and everything like that, but I mean, why make that appointment in the first place if you're not gonna give it more than a year?
I just look, you're right, but at the same time I think the answer is maybe you just shouldn't have made that appointment.
Yes, and I think so too. I think there's an easy way for you to like look, Andrea Pirlo, given his name, his reputation as a player, if he would have gone and coached in lower leagues or even a bottom team in Serie A, given his reputation and his name, he would always be able to have a conversation about becoming Juventus manager. Wanting it right now, and look, this also applies for every single young manager that we've talked about in the past. This applies to Arteta. This applies to Lampard. He would always be linked with that job as soon as he had like a fairly successful season in like Serie B, maybe gets a team promoted, maybe he gets a lower Serie A team. There's ways of doing this where you don't put your club in a very vulnerable position like the Agnellis have done. And the cost of them making that appointment is much greater than the cost of, say, Arsenal appointing Arteta, because Juventus expects to be winning the Scudetto every year. So they're paying for it with points. And if they stick with Pirlo, which now that they've made that decision, I think they kind of should. And if they don't, then they've pretty much just wasted a year, and wasted a year of having like one of the best players in the world, albeit in decline. It's just really, really bad management. The signing of Ronaldo and the appointment of Pirlo, if you look at it after Pirlo is gone, it will have not made any financial sense, commercial sense. Well, commercial sense to a degree, you're signing Ronaldo, but I just don't think that's a very smart decision.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, I'm of two minds. Is it a smart decision given the objective of giving it time to breathe? No. But I just don't know that I've seen anything that suggests he just needs another year of time to learn and then he'll be a great manager. I don't know. Maybe if you're Juventus, the other thing, like you said, is you've got to believe on some level a reasonably talented manager should have you in a neck and neck title race with Inter Milan, if not winning the Scudetto. So is it weird to say? I kind of think if you're Juventus, maybe you go, look, hands up. He didn't have enough experience and we fucked up.
Yeah.
We need someone who gets us to be competitive now. If he proves himself later on, doors always open to come back.
I mean, just a handful of guys that I could toss out that would have been in a really good fit. You could ask Max Allegri to come back. I don't know whether he'd be willing to do so, but there you go. There's one option. Another option is like Leonardo Jardim. You could go and get him. He's not working anywhere right now. There are a bunch of guys that have a pretty good reputation and a really good CV that you could have brought in that could still be viewed as like a project, a little bit less so in Allegri's case, but like there are guys with experience that you could bring in. You could have even given
Luis Enrique away from the national team, Spanish national team,
or even like you could have given Sarri a little bit more time, you know? Like it's really it just seems like Juventus behaving not like a big club, which is probably the most surprising thing to me.
No, I mean that's a pretty good point. I mean, look, one of the themes of this season, it seems like across all these leagues, is despite what it looked like at the beginning, in the end, the favorites end up sort of ending up where they quote unquote belong. I mean, despite Leicester looking like they were going to threaten the top four throughout the entire Premier League season, they drop out on the very last day. Despite Juventus basically looking like they wouldn't be in the Champions League for most of the season, they find their way back in on the last day. And similarly in Germany, Borussia Dortmund hold on to a Champions League spot after looking like they were done and dusted as far as the Champions League was concerned only a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, before we even get into Germany specifically, just as I point this out, would you say there's a bit of a lesson to learn here of just the financial side of this game really has made it that even when these teams look like they're able to sustain challenges, the depth just generally isn't there to compete with the top of the top.
Yeah. No, it is true. And well, it's in part the reason why people wanted to make a super league. It is to solidify financial power among those teams. And at the end of the day, look, consistent seasons where these big teams are underperforming is going to normalize things. But do you trust that to happen with the financial head start if you take it from this point that they have? It's not a very high probability chance, I would argue. I think these clubs, they have the resources to, if they really wanted to, just go out and pay like one of the best managers in the world, and they'll immediately be that much better, and they'll be able to add in depth where these other teams can't. There's reasons why, Leicester, they went and they won the league, and then they dropped down quite a bit. They had a stable but dipped period with Claude Puel after Ranieri, Craig Shakespeare as well, and they've just started to kind of ascend back up to near Champions League with Brendan Rodgers. That's still, obviously, look, that title win that year was an absolute like miraculous thing, possibly one of the best underdog stories in sports. So even in those big success cases like that, it takes so much sustained top finishes for you to build the finances of the club. And, like everyone can look and point at it. It's like, oh, well, like these teams wanted to join the Super League and they're like sucking ass right now. But the truth of the matter is that financial power is going to be present for years to come. And it takes years of deterioration to even start to diminish those clubs,
Yeah, and I mean, look, as weird as it seems, that's sort of why I honestly don't know how Leicester fans feel about this season as a whole, having won the FA Cup, but not making it in the Champions League. I just think there's an argument that the finances and the appeal to players of the Champions League perhaps would have, in the long run, helped elevate their club more than an FA Cup win. I guess going back to Germany, though, Dortmund, a team that relative to the other teams in Germany is a big team that always will find, sort of, as you're saying, found its way back in despite looking like they were out of it. Sort of lest we forget, relative to the rest of the European elite, are not one of those big teams. Or are not quite on the level of some of the really big teams. So despite them making the Champions League, it sort of seems from what's being reported that Jadon Sancho will be leaving definitively this summer. And there's a bit of a question mark over whether Haaland will be gone as well. So we really might get a completely rebirthed Dortmund team going forward that might be based around Moukoko and Jude Bellingham and players like that as sort of the central spine of the team.
Yeah. So Dortmund has, at least in the last decade and a bit, they've had an incredible record of developing players and profiting from them, much like you could call them the Central Europe Porto and Benfica. Like they are extremely good at selling on players at big profits, except in the cases where they give their biggest rival their best players for free. But that's a completely different story. But I mean, look, if you look at the sales, assuming they sell Haaland and Sancho, that's basically covering their losses of gate revenues for this COVID pandemic. That's really, really strong. They are a well-run club. They are kind of decidedly so by the 51 plus rule, but they're going to find new players to come and step in those positions that are really young. They're going to go and they're going to pick up existing players in Germany, solid German players to fill those positions that maybe have a bit more experience. For that Sancho spot, I could see them going out and trying to get someone like Marcus Thuram to fill that position. I can see them going out and getting, in terms of striker, yes, giving Moukoko a lot more minutes, but maybe going for someone a little bit more old as an option. Obviously not this player exactly, but in sort of like the Sandro Wagner kind of age bracket when he moved to Bayern, that kind of mold, to just have someone kind of carry it forward for them. But it looks to be that it'll be quite a transition year for them. They have Marco Rosa coming in, who has done very, very well with Mönchengladbach. And I mean, he looks an exciting manager. There was a lot of Arsenal fans that wanted him to replace Arteta. But I think that Dortmund is going to be a really good fit for him, and it'll be interesting to see the way that they rebuild from that Holland, assuming Holland leaves, but from that Sancho money.
Well, the last sort of two leagues we're going to look at that wrapped up actually did have title races go down to the last day of the season.
Sorry, just before that, I wanted to shout out to Robert Lewandowski, who broke the Gerd Muller 49-year record in the last minute of the last game of the season.
How can we forget? Right after almost having it stolen from him by the Poland manager's decision to play him against Andorra, he managed to break the record in the last minute possible. Congratulations to Robert Lewandowski. It should not have been this close. That's all we'll say.
It should not have been this close. But you did it, buddy. You did it.
Let's start with France of the last two leagues, because you are in France.
Yes.
And I don't think either of us expected to be talking about a title race in the last day of the season.
Yeah, no, it was extremely tight here. And honestly, for most of the season, you had PSG, you had Lille, you had Monaco, and then you had Lyon just a little bit out of that. All of which were pushing very, very hard, specifically those first three. Monaco had a very, very good season. Niko Kovac has been excellent with them. PSG, a very lackluster season, but basically they started off the first part of the season with Thomas Tuchel being disgruntled and out of spite playing Danilo Pereira and who was the other one at center back when he was trying to.
Yeah, didn't he play Danilo Pereira and an academy guy next to each other out of protest and center back or something?
Yeah,
like
exactly, because the board didn't buy him another center back.
Diallo or whatever his name is.
I believe so. But he basically through that, PSG had not had a good season in Liga. But at this point for PSG, they're only trying to focus on the Champions League, which, as it turns out, they also kind of fucked up. So they just had a poor season all around, but they outspend the next highest spending team in France by a ridiculous sum. And it's expected that they're going to be winning the league most years, and if not, coming in second. So Mbappe still finished as top scorer. That's not very surprising, but I guess a lot of it comes into question is the same confidence. There's still a team that's looking to become a dominant team like that City, the team that, you're very, very scared to play against in the Champions League. And to be honest with you, I don't think they've really got that, even though they made it to the final last year. I still remember going in to watch that City game, feeling that City were just professionally and mentally a lot better than PSG in that tie. But so that was PSG's season in a nutshell. And then finally you have Lille, the champions, who secured it on the last day of the season through goals from Burak Yilmaz to win it, and your boy and mine, Jonathan David, the Canadian himself, winning the game 2-1 after a late consolation goal for Angers. They put together an absolutely excellent season. Very, very happy that whenever a team not named PSG wins the Liga, this was a very, very well played season by them. They had a lot of good performers during the season. A lot of people are talking about Soumare as being an excellent midfielder coming up. Sven Botman, who we've talked about before on this pod, had a wonderful season. And even old veteran guys that have made their marks, that particularly Burak Yilmaz, who contributed, I think, 20 goals in all competitions, and Jose Font, the ex-Southampton defender, really, really playing important roles for this team. And honestly, congratulations to Lille. Congratulations to our Canadian friend, Jonathan David. And it was a great day for Lille. I watched that game and was very happy when they won.
Yeah, and maybe now that PSG have finally lost the league, they'll consider buying a midfield. That makes some sense.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
Who
Very,
knows?
very true.
Or they'll just keep relying on Neymar and Mbappe to do literally everything and just saying, "Hey, Icardi, why don't you just go stand there and do nothing like you always
Oh
do?"
my God, man. All of the PSG's fans that I talk to are so sick of having Neymar on their team. Every single
Really,
one of
eh?
the, yeah, oh, they're so sick of him. They want Neymar gone. They also want Icardi gone. They realize that they're going to lose Mbappe, but they are so frustrated with Neymar.
Yeah, I mean, be careful what you wish for, is all I'd say.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't too long ago that Pauletta was the best player in this club's history, so
Yeah, no, that's true. And Nene.
yeah. Um, well, why don't we finish up the episode by talking about the funniest, well, finish up our review of these leagues, I should say, by talking about the funniest title race of them all out in La Liga.
Yeah. Well, look, there's the old adage that slow and steady wins the race, but I mean, there were 3 tortoises, maybe even 4 in this race, and it seemed like at different points of the season, none of them wanted to win this league. It was a very peculiar title race in Spain. Um, you had a horrific Barcelona side, probably the worst that we've seen, maybe even in our lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember the Barcelona pre-Ronaldinho,
Yeah, me neither.
and I don't really have the great. I mean, they transitioned pretty smoothly from Ronaldinho to Messi without much of a hitch. So I feel like this
Yeah.
might be the worst Barcelona side I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, I guess when I say in our lifetime, I would say in our watching lifetime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So this it has been an absolutely terrible season for Barcelona. They through lots and lots of mismanagement at board level, financial clusterfuck, you could call it. They've put themselves well out of the running for any sort of trophies this year, other than the Copa del Rey, which they managed to tuck away. Um, other than that, Real Madrid and Atletico were the ones that were running this the closest. Atletico was in very, very far in the lead early in the season. I think that the maximum they were 12 points up on Real Madrid, and then went through a spell where they had lost games and tied games, and the gap closed to just 1 point at parts. And Atletico needed a win in the final game of the season, or they just needed, yeah, they needed a win on the final game of the season to really show it up, shore it up. Real Madrid needed a win to keep pace, and maybe Atletico would mess it up. Both teams went down 1-0 in the first half, which, if that would have stood, would have made it the least climactic title win ever, where both challenging teams just lose and don't really do it. And
yeah.
Atletico gets awarded the title, but
No, just to add in, Atletico are playing bottom of the league, Real Valladolid.
yeah,
Um, this, I mean, regardless of the result against Atletico, there was a good chance their manager was getting fired, and they came out and scored early, and really Atletico were not playing well in the beginning of the game, and
yeah,
I started to wonder, oh my God, are they really going to throw this one away?
yeah,
Until I saw that Real Madrid was also losing, although to Villarreal, which is perhaps a little more understandable, as Arsenal will tell you.
yeah. And yeah, so the Atletico manages to tie it up, and then managed to get a winning goal through Luis Suarez, who very, very happy for him. Uh, he was in tears after the game. Very emotional guy. Obviously does bite people sometimes on occasion, but he made a very, very big speech about how he felt like rejected by Barcelona and that they didn't treat him with respect. And then he comes out and he manages to be one of the top scorers in La Liga. I think if not, he might have actually won the Golden Boot. I don't know if someone overtook him for that, but he goes and he scores the winning goal for Atletico. And there was also a Kieran Trippier clearance that was celebrated like a goal by Diego Simeone on the sidelines, which was very, very funny. And Atletico managed to hold on and secure their second league win under Simeone, which as someone that really, really loves Diego Simeone and Atletico, I was very, very happy about this. I am sick of seeing Barcelona and Real Madrid win it every year. So having Atletico win it, I was a happy guy.
Yeah, I mean, so Messi actually ended as top scorer, and just to put that into perspective, this Barcelona season was no Lionel Messi fault. This
Yeah,
was everything around the guy. He still managed to score 28 goals this season, in a dysfunctional year for Barcelona, and I'm sure made many more goal contributions than just his goals suggest.
yeah,
So this really was a disgraceful performance from the Barcelona board to really let him down, I would say.
yeah.
Atletico end up finishing as champions after winning 2-1. One thing I'll say, Real Madrid also, as you pointed out, turning that game around. Shout out to Karim Benzema, again, sort of pulling a goal out of his ass and then providing an assist out of his ass to at least give them the win in that one.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I bring that up, I saw a stat. I think for in all competition or in La Liga, Karim Benzema is Real Madrid's highest scorer with 23 goals.
Mm-hmm.
Their second highest scorer is 3 players tied on 7.
Wow. He is carrying that team.
And one of those 3 players is Casemiro. So
Wow.
Real Madrid's second highest goal scorer, it's fair to say, was their defense only defensive midfielder.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, just terrible from the rest of them. And honestly, I mean, who knows what had happened if Hazard was there? But outside of that one game, I take back nothing we said about Vinicius. You need to learn how to finish, bud.
Yeah. Absolutely. But, congratulations to Atletico. Congratulations to Lille. Congratulations to Inter. Congratulations to City. This was a very, very long run season, and it's finally come to a close.
But it has not come to a close without a disgrace of the week.
Absolutely.
And this week we have a few different disgraceful suggestions. Our first nominee is the La Liga title race as a whole. There were moments there where it looked like, I mean, let's not just talk about this one weekend. I think about 5 weeks ago, we looked at the table and said there are 4 teams in this race: Seville, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Atletico. And all of them have an opportunity here to win the rest of their games and grab. If any of them had won out, they would have won the league. And we really thought someone's going to take their opportunity here to grab a hold of the league and take the league title in their hands. And really, all 4 of them proceeded to drop points at an incredible rate over the last month of the season or so, to the point where basically, as you put it, no one wanted it.
Yeah.
So, you guys collectively earn your nomination. Our next nomination is Leicester for having blown it again, basically the second time in a row, where having been the favorites for the Champions League throughout most of the year, they blew it nearly on the last day of the season, if not the last day of the season. And the other side of this coin, I'm going to call it the same nomination, is the FA Cup. How disgraceful is it that basically most Leicester fans and players, I think, now are horribly sad about the way this season went, despite having won the first FA Cup in their history. It really shows you the lack of power that tournament continues to hold in sort of comparison to the way the modern game is developing. So those are our nominees for this week. But our winner is the goddamn Harry Kane handball. A glorious disgrace from the perspective of a Chelsea fan, no doubt. But I mean, look, the rule is intentional handball on the part of a defensive player, which includes hand in an unnatural position, is a
Mhm.
penalty. On the part of an offensive player, any contact between the hand and the ball that leads to a goal will invalidate the goal.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what the hell happened here, but there basically seems to be no explanation, and there's no question that the ball hit Harry Kane's hand
Yeah.
prior to falling for Bale. I don't know. I don't know what to say at this point. Someone pointed out the disgrace in this situation is not VAR. VAR did its job. It isolated the frame that clearly showed that the ball hit the hand.
Yeah.
The disgrace is whoever the hell it is operating VAR
Yeah. Yeah.
looked at that and said, "Looks good to me, Chief," and moved on. I mean, I don't get it. And I don't get why this is such a thing in England and basically nowhere else.
Yeah. I
Um,
look, there have been lots of people. My dad, for example, just thinks this is a very, very hot take from Papa Negastopoulos, but he just thinks that this is a way for the Premier League to ensure certain results to make sure the biggest teams get to the positions where they should be at. Uh, he thinks that it's just a way of like formalizing match fixing. I don't think it's necessarily as egregious as that, but there's
if that was
clearly
true,
lots of
VAR would not hate you
inconsistency.
guys.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. That's what I said to him actually. But it's really, really really tough to find an explanation. Look, if that is what they're using it for, they're doing a great job. So but it like these inconsistencies with the rules, the inconsistency of how things are handled day to day, it just seems like there needs to be a total uprooting of the head of refereeing, how things are being interpreted, or even just have it like UEFA installs is in charge of the VAR for all the leagues. Like that would
Yeah,
be something to
UEFA, the
normalize
solution
it.
to all corruption. Imagine.
Oh, yeah, I know. I feel disgusted just saying that, but look, at least it would be like unified corruption instead of
Well,
just
look,
this whatever the fuck we have here in England.
I don't get it. It just seems like it's a uniquely England problem. The World Cup in Russia in 2018 used VAR without a hitch.
Yeah, and it was perfect. It remains the first usage of VAR and the hands down best usage of VAR.
Well, see, you say hands down best, but I don't even know if that's true. I think if you watch the Italian league now, they're actually pretty. There have been some mistakes, obviously, because there's so many games, but it's
I
been
guess
pretty good. It's just in comparison to what we're seeing now, it was perfect then.
yeah, yeah.
The first time they got it 100% right, and somehow
It
throughout the
also
course of the
didn't
season,
impact. The thing is, the usage in Russia didn't impact very heavily on the atmosphere within the stadium, and that's why I say that it's the best.
right. So the most notable example of VAR really taking time to delay a game was in the final in the tournament when there was that handball off the corner that ended up leading to the
Perisic,
penalty.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But that actually was sort of the perfect VAR procedure, which is someone said, hey, there's something here that needs the ref to take a look at this and determine what happened. And I think the ref made the right call in that situation too.
I think so too.
And it took a couple minutes, but a couple minutes to determine a penalty in the World Cup final is what we're all happy to wait on. What we're not happy
Yeah,
to do is review every goddamn little offside for whether the guy's like belly button ring was fucking offside or something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And it's just I don't know. I don't know why the Premier League hasn't figured this out versus other leagues, which don't. And the Champions League, even the Champions League doesn't seem to quite have the same level of incompetence that the Premier
Yeah.
League is, right? So I just don't get it. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know why this is even a problem, but it just makes no sense. And it really something needs to be done about it because it's just ridiculous that these calls
Yeah.
are happening.
Well, I mean, it became even more muddled after. Do you remember the Eric Dyer handball early in the season? I think they were playing Newcastle. It was very
Yeah.
early in the season, and that was the one where they were just like, okay, and then they started to give a little bit of leeway to the sleeve or whatever it was. And then they proceeded to just absolutely kind of disregard that and just go so far in the opposite direction that it was just so obviously not the right way to do it. Like the when Pepe, there was the handball against Burnley where the guy had his hands basically in front of him and swatted the ball out of the air from Pepe, and they didn't call that a handball. And one like this with Harry Kane, who's in an attacking position. Like it has become so farcical and inconsistent that I don't, I mean, the more and more these calls happen, the more and more I start seeing my dad's take and just be like, that makes a lot of fucking sense.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, from VAR clangers to a couple of bangers, what do you have for the banger of the week this week to close out the show?
So my first nominee is going to go. This is a little bit of an unorthodox banger, and I need to take my rage out on Spurs somehow. So it is the nominee for Reguilon's own goal against Aston Villa, where the ball comes into the box and he absolutely slices it. A beautiful slice. Tiger Woods would be proud into the bottom corner of his own net, looping over Hugo Lloris. That was textbook own goalery, and good for him. Another funny note to that, as I listened to on another podcast, apparently his girlfriend was doing a story about how she was at the stadium and supporting like Region and everything like that. And all the stories mysteriously stopped after a certain own goal went in. So I found that a little bit funny. But no, it does not win. I had to get my jab in somewhere. The second nominee, the first real nominee, is going to be Sergio Aguero for his goal against Everton to make it 4-0, where he dribbles around 2 or 3 Everton defenders and very deftly toe pokes it kind of outside of the footish toe poke into the bottom corner. A really, really nice finish, a beautiful bit of dribbling that really shows us what we're going to be missing in Sergio Aguero and how much he's contributed to the Premier League. He is undoubtedly one of the best strikers that has played in the Premier League, and he did so solely for Manchester City. And also in this game, he breaks the Rooney's record for most goals at a single Premier League club. And congratulations to Sergio Aguero, but he will be denied of Banger of the Week this week to cap off his depart from City. The winner of this week's banger is going to go to Edson Cavani against Fulham, where he manages to chip the keeper from inside, I would say about 5 yards past the center circle. He takes the ball absolutely brilliantly on a breakaway. Seems like he kind of recognizes that his legs maybe weren't what they used to and just decides, fuck it, this guy's off his line, let's try it. And he produces a beautiful chip to make it 1-0 for Manchester United at that point. Beautiful goal, and Edson Cavani, you are this week's Bergkamp Banger of the Week.
I think that wraps things up for us this week. So catch us next week when we wrap up Chelsea's biggest game of the season, the Champions League final against Manchester City. We'll also be wrapping up the Europa League final, even though no one cares about that now that Arsenal's not in it anymore. Man U are already in the Champions League, so it's essentially just a vanity trophy for Solskjaer, which he doesn't even care about, but whatever. And we will be wrapping up the Premier League sort of as a whole. So make sure to check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. That does it for us this week. See you guys next week.
Bye-bye now.